And even when I committed to opening that gym, part of me didn't even know how it was all going to happen. And it did. Like, I do believe sometimes you've got to make the challenge just hard enough that you have to rise to the occasion.
Welcome to the True Icon podcast today. I'm beyond excited for this conversation because this guest has so much lived experience, so much passion, as well as experience in running her own company and working in many different industries to bring all of her strengths together. And I'm really excited because Janine, and I'll introduce her in a bit, is pairing aligned action and letting go and also uncovering the self in order to get to the next stages. So if you've ever been in the part of life where you feel a bit stuck and you're not sure exactly what to do, but you know in your heart that there's the path ahead of you, you're just kind of stuck in between the path of getting there, then this conversation's for you. I am so excited to introduce Jeannine Trimboli to the stage here. So welcome.
Hello. And I have to ask, just because they made an appearance during your intro, what is your doggy's name?
My dog's name is Zeus. He is mostly behind the scenes producer man of Staying Quiet.
I love it. Zeus has joined us. This is going to be great.
Yes. He's on the cat tree currently.
Love it.
All right. So let's tell the audience a bit about yourself. From someone in the audience might be experiencing different transitions in their life with jobs, or maybe they're at a path where they're looking for more. Maybe speak to them of just overall. Janine, who are you? Your overall bio.
Wow, that's a lot. In many things. So in a nutshell, I would say, so I grew up in the Utica area originally. I moved to the Capital Region 95, and I'm 53 now, so that'll give people an idea. I've been here since 95. So this feels like home to me. Prior to coming to the Capital Region, since third grade, I had been very deeply passionate about theater, acting, musical theater. It's what I went to college for and what I thought I was going to be doing for the rest of my life. And then my first child arrived, and I moved here to the Capital Region in 95 and gave birth to my first of 4 children and started my life here. And while I did continue to perform and participate in professional theater here in the Capital Region for a couple years, over time, as my family grew, it became clear that theater was not going to be a viable option. I wouldn't be able to do both. And I did eventually also end up a single parent. So that also created other obstacles for me. So from performing, I ended up in the fitness industry, which was a natural move for me because I was already into fitness as a way to stay in shape for performing. I also just loved fitness. I had a natural interest in it. So over time, I made my way working for other gyms, fitness management, worked as a fitness consultant, and then eventually hit that ceiling where there really was no further for me to grow working for other people in the industry. And I decided to take that jump and start my own business, my own brand, which was called Real Fit Life. And the tagline under that was fitting fitness into real life. And I had that business for 11 years, which was also during that time was when I was also raising my kids as a single mom. So having my own business also gave me flexibility that I needed to be able to also take care of my children while having a way to support us. And then the pandemic happened, and I was already starting to feel like I was outgrowing the business owner phase, maybe outgrowing fitness. I think I clashed a little bit with some of the natural trends that occur in the fitness industry, and I wasn't always aligned with some of that, and we can get into that maybe or not. And so I naturally outgrew fitness. The pandemic happened. And I just decided, do I want to go back and try and regrow this business, or do I want to just move on and do something else? And it was not an easy decision. And then one day I just sat down and crunched the numbers. And once I could see the path and how I could do it, very similar to what I did when I sat down to decide to start my business, I thought, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to let this go. Had no idea where I was going to land, what was going to do next. But as I've done throughout my life, I trusted that the universe was going to show me. And I ended up in the electrical industry. And I really thought it was going to be a short-term gig. It was just going to be something I would do until I figured out my next step. But I ended up finding that all of the business acumen that I naturally had and which helped me grow my own business, I now could also apply to someone else's business in the electrical industry. It also helped me really see that I have a natural knack for standard operating procedures. I'm very much about organization. And so seeing the way I could take this and bring it to another industry. And I really liked being in the electrical industry. I think I tend to gravitate towards industries where it is not the norm for women to thrive. And I like that added challenge. So I think that was another appeal for me. And so now I am working with Caruso Electrical, and I'm seeing this as like my new forever home. When I met Angela, we were very aligned in many ways. So I'm very excited now that I'm fully committed and I know that I really do like the trades and it's something that I want to continue to build my career in. I have, planted myself at Caruso and have been there 6 months and I'm loving it. So that's a lot of story in a very short condensed as I can make it.
Yeah. And I appreciate that because like you, I feel like I'm always looking for challenges. I feel like almost to the point where some might see it as overcomplicated. Like I always push myself just a bit more and a little bit more. And I keep doing that until it's like this challenge that I would never know I would have gotten this type of outcome. Like I would have never seen how cool it could be, but it's also a challenge. So I have so many different parts of life as well, between like personal training and then managing data analytics and all of the things that so many different parts that seem so separate. But I love how in this, we'll unpack a bit of that because what it comes to me is the decisions, knowing when to change, when to make a change, trusting the process, as well as letting go and kind of letting the universe do its thing, where that's the hard part. And that's the parts where a lot of us might feel stuck, where we know that there's something more, but it's just those in-betweens of how to get there. And maybe it's a bit of the doing it imperfectly and not just trying to have it be perfect. But I really appreciate that because all of those different pieces that are seemingly unrelated come together. As we go through the story, we'll unpack those pieces because each one is a different level of leveling up in your life and journey. And you have, after speaking with you and knowing you have so much more clarity than ever in this spot, and it aligned, and you never maybe would have thought this before. So from that journey, we'll unpack that. And before we do that, what's the values or aliveness in your current season right now? How are you feeling, or what's the vibe?
Feeling very aligned, I think, is the way. And that didn't just, there was a lot of behind the scenes work that had to occur for me to get to that point. I think another thing, as I go through the story of my career, the part that we don't get to talk about a lot, but also really deeply impacts everything that happens in my professional life, is what's happening in my personal life. And I'm someone who has encountered in my younger years, some of it was brought on myself through naivete, or maybe what weren't the best decisions, but sometimes we're impulsive and we just do things when we're younger. And then we have whatever's before us that we have to now deal with. So younger in my life. And then, as I've gotten older, just learning through personal challenges, whether they're challenges in relationships with friends, professional relationships, love relationships. A lot of that also, I chose to take those opportunities to really hold the mirror up to myself time and time again, to really get to know who I am as a person, how I operate, why I make the decisions I make, and why I engage with people in the ways that I do. And sometimes it wasn't positive. Sometimes I was finding that there were areas where I would get caught up because of past experiences and preconceived notions I had. So for me, when I say aligned, everything about me, I feel I have gotten to a point where I am very in tune with who I am, how I operate, self awareness as to things that might have caught me up in the past where these, for instance, I'll give an example, difficult conversations. I am someone, and this may surprise people who know me, who have engaged with me, because I do come across as very, and I am usually very straightforward, very direct. I like to say what's what. I'm
Yeah,
not a
yeah.
beat around the bush kind of person. But something that has always given me great anxiety and personal strife is difficult conversations. And so for me, really taking the time, because I understood if I am going to elevate as a professional, this is an area that I need to work on, and I need to get over that discomfort, or at least learn how to navigate it and not avoid the conversations. So what I realized is part of what I needed to do in order to get to that place was to really understand what it is inside of me that makes me feel so uncomfortable in those situations. And really taking time to be with myself, meditating, listening to people who inspire me, who have good advice around these areas and that actually give me skill sets. So I'm someone where once I have the words to describe what it is I'm experiencing, and then I can learn from someone else what are the steps I need to follow to get over that hump. That is how I as a person function best.
Yes. And that's a big thing, looking deeper in that self and letting the ego go, because that clash, those difficult conversations take a lot of humility and listening and unbiased conversations in order to actually hear the people and hear the situation for what it is in other perspectives. So letting, that other stuff go is huge. So I'm curious now. So that's from where you are now, very aligned, which is fantastic. I'm guessing it wasn't always that way. So maybe it was, but maybe it wasn't. So let's go back into before, where it was less aligned. So maybe through your beginning of the journey, or wherever resonates, where you were seeking, you weren't as deep into that self, or you were going through the motions that could be either feeling stuck or feeling small, or anything that's boxed in, where it's basically the opposite of where you are now.
Well, I know one that we touched on yesterday that has
Yeah.
also been huge for me. Again, a lot of I will speak for myself only. I don't like to speak for other people. But I have learned that much of the ways that I was operating, whether it was consciously or subconsciously, was because of past experiences in my life. And so I have had some great difficulty and some bad experiences with people in my past. And I was not aware fully, now I am, how that was in me creating a subconscious sense of distrust of others. I oftentimes, although I thought I was a very positive person, I realized that I often was assuming there would be a negative outcome. And this also ties into my fear of having difficult conversations, already assuming I would know what the outcome would be or what the other person's response would be, right? So going back and realizing that I was seeing people through a lens that did not open me up for more. So I became very intentional, and I need to practice things right before they come real until you don't really have to think about it anymore. But really getting intentional about the idea that when I have a conversation with someone that I am going to always assume that that person is coming from a place of good intentions.
Okay. That resonates with me a lot because from the expectation side, that
Mhm.
affected me of I had some challenges when I was younger, whether it was bullying or just not fitting in, right? So that was very hard for me. So those few moments stood out to me. So then I projected that to everyone. Oh, they're just not being nice. They're just feeling bad for me, or they're not being authentic. But when I look back at it now, some of it was definitely, stay away from, maybe they're not being kind. However, every single person I met is not having bad intentions. And that was projecting from an expectation side, saying what assumptions, oh, they're not going to invite me or they're not this or that. And that translated later on in life into opportunities, which I realized later on. But I talk about this sometimes of not being the first no, not letting yourself be your first no, whether it's a business, whether it's something else. If I'm the one saying, oh, it's not good enough or it's not a good business idea or whatever, then I'm already shooting it down before I even give it life, before I even give it a shot. At least let the environment, let the economics of it, let that work and you can pivot and figure it out. But if I shoot myself down, it's always going to be a no. So I resonate with that heavily. And now I always learn from someone. I always love to learn from people and that could be anyone. And I try to really see and hear each person, and that's flipped for me. So I resonate with that mindset because the negativity, it felt like I was being positive in some ways, but I didn't even realize it. And it took me a long time to figure that out.
Yeah, it's that idea of how do I operate from a place of openness rather than being closed off, or even in the work setting, always assuming that everyone is doing their best. And so when I approach people in conversation, when I meet people at a networking event or wherever, really just, and curiosity has become another big one for me.
That's huge. What are you most curious about now? What do you love to learn about?
Well, that's the openness. I let it reveal itself. So now when I stand and, it can be very uncomfortable, say, when we're at a networking event and we're talking to someone we know nothing about.
Yeah,
So trying to find something maybe about this person that, and it doesn't have to be business related, it doesn't have to be work related, but what's that something that's going to come out that's that thread line where now we have a conversation going. And I have found that if I just really stay open to the person in front of me and maybe even let there be a little pause or awkwardness, that there doesn't have to always be words flowing back and forth. Sometimes silence and a pause can be a good thing, right? And then just waiting to see what comes out of that. Found that, and not always, there are some people you just don't have a vibe with for whatever reason. It might be the other person that day, or it might be me that day. But I have found that I have had a lot more really interesting conversations with people than I would have in the past. And I'm really enjoying that and liking that. There's a different freedom about it.
that's big. And I love how it's open because then literally the expectations, everything is just relaxed and it allows the conversation to flow or even trusting your gut or your however you feel to go with the conversation. And maybe if it doesn't feel good, to stop it, and maybe it doesn't resonate, and maybe that's not the conversation for you at that day, whether if someone else had a bad day or maybe you're in a different mindset or myself. And I think that that's the part that we see a lot less of now, when especially with social media. I mean, you see a minute or less of edited social reels, and that has its own place. But then that's why I like having these conversations of, well, what's the real, like, what are people actually feeling? We can't be all feeling happy all the time, like Instagram shows. I mean, sometimes more than others. I mean, there are days people like, is your life really as good as it has been on social? I'm like, well, yeah, because I've gone through a lot of really challenging times
Yeah.
to get there, but I feel happy with self. And in this moment, then nothing's going to bother me if I feel good with myself.
Mm-hmm.
So in those moments before when you might have had that distrust and the negativity surrounding, what helped you get to the next step where you, I guess, between that time of that negativity and like you mentioned freedom. I mean, those are two very distinct things, different. Can you walk us through the journey in between those points of realizing or how you got to change that mindset from that negativity? I'm sure it was many different things, but what are some key points in that journey of you?
Well, the first thing I did is I sought out people. This is one of the beautiful things we have about now having the interwebs and having podcasts, and there's so much at our disposal now that we didn't have back when I was in my 20s even, right? Or 30s. So for me, I wanted to find who are my mentors or my gurus? Who are the people that are really teaching these things that I want to learn? And it's interesting. Once you find one, and then this is another beautiful thing. As much we can complain sometimes about the algorithms and the ways it will lock us in. Sometimes if, for instance, if I would search a certain author that I liked, Clarissa Pinkola Estes wrote a book back, I think it was the 60s or 70s. She originally wrote the book called Run with the Wolves. And that is a book that was recommended to me by a friend probably 10 years ago now. And I went back and I started to reread that book. And then from her, as I started to look up podcasts or other items of hers that were audible lessons that I could listen to, simply by starting now to search her on my phone, other people that had similar ways of teaching or ways of thinking started to populate my feed. So Tara Brach is someone I found through, I had done an awareness course, The Power of Awareness with Jack Cornfield, who is another yoga teacher who has been around very, very long time. We spoke yesterday, much of his lessons now are around loving kindness, which is a very, very common theme in Buddhist teaching and among many, many yoga teachers. And so I took this course called Power of Awareness, which again, it popped up in my feed and I was like, this sounds like something I'd like to do. It was a 9-month online course. And Jack had a whole team of teachers that taught the lessons with him. And Tara was one of those teachers. So that's actually how I found Tara, was through Jack Cornfield. And so Tara Brock also has an amazing podcast, and much of the material on her podcast are live lessons and talks that she has given to her yoga community in past, like maybe even 10 years ago, some of them. And I just went all the way back to the beginning. And especially on the weekends when I would have time, some people go to church, I would sit and listen to Tara Brock for an hour. And then there would be a meditation at the end, and then I would journal. And so then from there, I also found at one point a little transparency. My partner and I were navigating a rough patch in our relationship a couple years ago, and I was looking for something to help bring us together in conversation. And I found a book called Sovereign Love by a woman, Danae Logan, who I also now follow. And I went and did an actual weekend workshop with Danae here in Lenox, Massachusetts at Palu. So I got to spend a whole weekend with her. And she also has a podcast where she frequently shares words of wisdom. But all of these people, and I mean, I could go on, but so if anybody is like me, I'll get a name from one person and then I'll go search that person and that person will list 3 other people to me. And now I'm going down the rabbit hole of finding all of this wealth of knowledge of people that have lessons and verbiage that resonates with me and the journey that I'm currently on.
Yeah, I
So
resonate too with that because that whole, I want to mention this because I feel like a lot of times people are searching for something. They're searching for whether it's a fulfillment, alignment, etc. And you're looking for things like whether it's confidence or personal development, personal growth, and it's meets you at different stages of life. So I like how you're talking about the different podcasts and the different influences in your life at the time, and they grow with you. And as you mentioned, you find their recommendations and then you go towards that. And I can relate to that as well because I feel like I was never in one box either. I was always searching for more, searching for growth. And it's like, it's always in me. I mean, True Icon's all about staying true and boldly growing. That's how I was able to put all of the pieces of my life together. I'm like, oh, the consistent thing is growth, personal growth, mindset growth, whatever. It just clicked one day because I'm like, that's something that I've always done. And I think I want to mention this point because after listening to the different podcasts and surrounding that, was there a point that you were taking action along with this, or did it just happen after, like the switch between listening and taking action, or maybe you were doing it in unison?
Well, that is the action. I think something that has also shifted for me, I have always been an overachiever. And something that I've really gotten out of all of these, I refer to them as mentors, whether I've met them in person or not. Something I've really gained from all of these lessons and the practice. So when we talk about meditation and true self-awareness and getting in touch with who you are inside, that requires time investment to sit and be uncomfortable. And some of it might be physical. You know, it's when you're meditating, it's good actually to find a seated posture that's comfortable for you. So the bodily sensations themselves are not distracting, but allowing myself to really become aware and tap into the inner workings of whatever I am truly feeling that day, where if I were to stay busy and just keep moving around and have lots of noise and lots of distraction, and this is something this is very easy for us to do in today's society. You know, the irony that I found many of these people through social media, but then when I sit down and practice their lessons and listen to them, it is about doing less. It's not about doing more. It is
That's
about,
big.
yes, it was very big for me. The confidence in starting to really know and understand that everything that I need, I already possess. Where I think there was a time I was like, "Oh, I need to go take this course. And maybe if I take that course," and always thinking there was something else I needed to do to make me more legitimate in my craft or in my career. And finally getting to a point, and this also, you know, as we talked about in my Pechakucha and we've spoken about my own journey not that long ago before I started at Caruso, of even going through the job search and what that experience can do to one's feelings of self and being, am I valid? Do I really know as much as I think as much as I think I know, when you're getting rejections or people aren't even responding, and that was another moment for me where I was like, I have to get more grounded. This is revealing to me more areas personally that I need to work on, because clearly if I'm letting this affect me and feel this way about myself, I have more work to do on myself.
I appreciate that. And I appreciate that distinction. That's a loop. You're right. That looking to do the things and listening to the things to do more, to get that validation or the credibility or the certificate or whatever it is, I think that's a separate loop. And I appreciate your distinction, because letting go and slowing down is action, because you're not just wide and putting yourself in every direction. You're being purposeful and aligned. Tremendously appreciate that distinction. And okay, so when we're back at where you were listening to the different podcasts, it led you down the path here. So going back into that story of finding that the path towards that freedom, that we'll say, do you mind putting us back into that story?
In my journey right now, I'm in a place of just enjoying the fruits of my labor.
Yeah.
I'm in a phase now where I'm really just enjoying all of the experiences that I get to have. And that includes challenges. Even where I work now, it's a growing company. There are daily challenges that I am always working at and addressing. And this is another shift in mindset. We've been looking at the EOS system, and I was listening to one of their podcasts, and the whole theme of that podcast was understanding that in a growing company, to look at when you have issues that you need to deal with, to look at that with gratitude, because a growing company should always have issues. And if you're not facing issues or not having issues to solve, that's actually when you should be worried. But we think about all the stress we usually go through when we're in the work environment and what we see as negative issues that come up. And so again, that's a mind shift change to say, oh no, this is actually the good stuff. This is what we should be dealing with right now. And I guess the other thing I want to say is, when there is no finish line. I think that's the thing that's hard for me to talk about, like where I'm at in my journey now, because I
Mhm.
know at some point another situation's going to come up, and it's either going to be in my personal life or my professional life, and something's going to get mirrored back to me. And then I'm going to realize I've got more work to do. So
Yes.
you're never done. It's a process I loved way, way back in the day when I was very deeply taking yoga classes. One of my teacher would call this infinite abundance. There's always more. And it doesn't mean just more of what we think of the good stuff. It's in everything, infinite abundance. There is always more. And so that's what comes to mind for me when I think about this, because my personal journey and my professional journey to me are one and the same. They are intertwined. You can't separate one from the other. Yes, we can say that when we walk into the workplace, we may have a slightly different persona or a way of engaging with people than we do at home. But my goal is to be able to find places where I can be so aligned. And I do feel grateful that I am at a place like that now, where I don't feel that I have to do that. And for me, when we talk about freedom and we talk about liberation, that's really what I'm getting at. So we talked about yesterday how this whole idea of authenticity, it's become such a buzzword. But what is it really to be authentic? To be able to move and operate day to day, moment to moment, know wherever you are, or whoever I am engaging with as an individual, always as the same person. And I feel like all this work that I don't feel, I know, all of this work that I have been doing has gotten me further along that path to be able to, I'm not going to say 100% of the time, but I'll say I'm at probably 95% of the time that I can be that same person in any environment. But it's been hard because I have had to challenge myself at home, with family, with loved ones, and in the workplace. I have had to challenge myself to show up fully, truthfully, and honestly. And like we said, the toughest part for me has been at times, I'm very astute. I see things oftentimes before other people do. But then having the bravery and the trust in myself to voice the things that I see sooner rather than later, which is what I used to do.
Mm. And I'm trying to think because these are deep, and I think that's the distinction because yeah, we're on this journey where we're dealing with the good and the bad, and even through my own spiritual practice, I've gone through a lot of the really dark times before the good, and then it goes back, and then I question things, and then it's back good, but then I find that I'm able to maybe recover faster. Maybe that's the word of like, I think it's the trust, like building the trust of, I know I can do hard things. I know that through the challenges, there are good things. And like, I think we talked about this in the past of knowing, like, it's okay to take the leap. It's okay to really trust in that self. even if you're not exactly sure what that is, but there's something either drawing you towards it or pulling you towards it. And for me, it was a vision where in my life, I didn't have my voice enough. Didn't have that defined. So it was like, be yourself. Like, well, how do I be myself if I don't know myself? So like, I trust that more. And still, like today, even, it's like, okay, I have this vision. And yesterday I had so many people talk about it in a way that just had me in gratitude and awe of like, oh my gosh, you get it. And at the same time, I could be going through different challenges about that same vision of how do I get to the next step, letting that part go. I think talk about the difficult conversations, that piece is something that I don't think we talk enough at all about. That, yeah, what are you looking for? What is that you're searching for? Is it this end goal? Well, sure. But in reality, I think it goes back to that openness and clarity that you go into. It's just all like coming to me right now. Okay, so from maybe a side of how all of these parts of your life kind of go together, I do want to talk about I think the best analogy that still resonates with me was when we talked about how there's the two doors, where I've always talked about this in terms of focus, but there's the one door, the red door. Maybe it's the job. Maybe it's the opportunity. Maybe it's something at home, the relationship, even that we get so focused on this one thing that we feel like we have to do. And this is it. This is what my parents told me to do. This is what society tells me to do. This is it. I'm trying to open it and then it's stuck. The door is just stuck. It's not opening and it's brings so much pain and pressure and all of these things come up. And then we realize that only after stepping back, only after letting go is that you realize there's this yellow door that's all over there that is already open, that leads to much more opportunity that you could ever realize. And it's that epiphany of going back to, like you said, letting go and letting the universe decide. People are so trapped on this one thing to focus on. And like your mind is in many cases thinking about like no doors and maybe even building your own door to the point where that's a key strength and allowing that to be so that you don't have those blinders on and that you don't see only what you're looking for. And that goes back to the conversations you even mentioned earlier. In a conversation, what you're curious about, you're just letting it occur naturally, because if you're focused on one thing, then that's it. Then you're not going to get as much out of it. You're going to get to see and hear the other person. So in that same light, you've had so many different opportunities go in your own journey. And let's talk about from the part of, say, building a business to start, and then how that translates with the next steps where you are now, because those skills, like it allowed you to grow the business in a way that was very meaningful for you, as well as making those hard decisions. So can you help paint us a picture of going through those process of decisions and also trust of you built something beautiful, you built the community, you have a lot of the meaningful connections, and it was in many cases something very unique. So how did you even get there? You were able to see the bigger picture. So maybe in the beginning stages, how were you open to opportunities in order to do that?
Well, honestly, so we're talking about Real Fit Life when I started
Yeah.
Real Fit Life.
Yeah.
I'll be completely honest with you. When I started Real Fit Life, for quite some time, I had been thinking about, as I was seeing the way my programming, what I was bringing to the table for other people for their facilities. There was always in the back of my mind, wow, look how much money I'm making these people. I wish I could find a way to do that for myself. But I had children to support. So it seemed honestly it would have been irresponsible of me to just, go and be like, I'm starting a business. I don't know how I'm going to put food on the table, but I'm just going to do it. Right. Well, again, going back to my years in yoga, my yoga teachers to say, tell the universe your plans and the universe will laugh. So I was working as a fitness director for a local club. I was not happy there. It was not going well. We were not aligned and I was let go. And at this point, I'm in the middle of a divorce. I'm being pulled in and out of family court by my, husband at the time. And now I'm realizing I have these children that I'm probably going to have to support myself. And I've just lost my job. And I sat there in the parking lot and I realized, as I said earlier, there is nowhere left for me to grow in this industry. If I go work anywhere now, I'm going to take a pay cut, not a pay raise. There's nowhere. I've reached the top in this area currently. And I was like, I'm going to start my own business. I have lost everything. I have nothing left to lose. I'm going to start my own business. I had no idea how I was going to do it, but it had worked out that weeks earlier, it was already in the works that I was planning to write a fitness blog for the Times Union. This was at a time when blogs were podcasts, what podcasts are now.
Yeah.
They were very, very popular. Everyone was reading blogs. And I started this fitness blog and the work just started to come. I started to get phone calls from people from large companies that wanted to bring in wellness programs and asked me if I wanted to bring in that wellness program. And you're absolutely right. I want to bring in your wellness program. Yeah. And so one opportunity led to another. I had a rolling suitcase I bought at Walmart. Walter Thorne from the Albany Business Review reminds me of this all the time. And I would roll that suitcase around the capital region. I'd drive it. I had a little Suzuki Ariel. The back of that car, my son was into mechanics and be like, Mom, you're killing the suspension on the back of your car. I would carry all that equipment around in the back of my little Suzuki Ariel all over the capital region. And over time, through the blog and all of these programs, and I also started teaching fitness through a continuing ed program at a local school, I started to build a following. And then from that following, an opportunity, and I networked my ass off. That's the other thing I did. I made sure anyone and everyone at any event I could go to knew who I was, knew what I did, knew what I wanted it to grow to. I was starting to tell people I wanted my own space. Well, it turns out someone had a space to rent out and they only needed half of it. And another person that I had met networking, those two people happened to meet. They mentioned they were looking for someone who might want a space. That person introduced me to them. And that's how I got my first fitness space.
Wow.
And then from there, that one ended up not working out. I thought I was going to have to just close everything. I'm in the UPS store one day, getting ready to send out resumes just to find a job, any job, now that the gym didn't make it. A woman I knew through networking walks in who had a fitness studio. I thought it was a yoga studio. She saw me. She's like, what are you doing in here? I'm like, my gym didn't work out. I'm sending out resumes. Janine, I have a gym. I'm like, well, I thought you just do yoga. No, I have a gym. We ended up pairing up. I then went into her space. I brought my clients. This was in a matter of weeks from the one closing to going into the other. I was able to pick up where I left off. And from there, things really took off to the point where I knew I was going to be ready for my own gym.
Yeah.
So from there,
Wow.
I found a 2,000 square foot space and we moved in. There was a lot in between all of this, of course, but we're on a timeline. And even when I committed to opening that gym, part of me didn't even know how it was all going to happen. And it did. Like, I do believe sometimes you've got to make the challenge just hard enough that you have to rise to the occasion where there is no looking back, right? Don't be reckless. I've always been good about knowing my budget, knowing my numbers, knowing what I can afford. That's always been something that I've been very, very good at. And I also think that's how I sustained and was able to grow as long as I could. But when we moved into that space and to see the logo on the wall and the floor plan and just the design that I had created and knew in my mind I wanted, and to see it come fully to fruition was an amazing thing. I still get choked up thinking about it. I miss my gym.
Yeah.
I miss the feel of it. I miss being in it. I don't miss the stress and anxiety of having to keep it running. So, yeah, it was a beautiful, amazing thing. But all of the lessons I learned through that journey and through running my business, that all comes with me.
Yeah.
So,
And then all of those lessons, I mean, there's so many different lessons. I mean, I'm sure even just 1 hour, 2 hour, like you need a lot of time to unpack a lot of those lessons, I'm sure, because you were living them real time. You had the opportunity, then all of that grit, all of the relationships, the opportunities that come up just from staying open and having the conversations you paired being in the community and networking with purpose, with letting go in some ways of someone's like, I have a gym, I have a space, and then just letting it happen and then building something so unique that wasn't in the community before in that way. And then you can take it forward. So from maybe bringing it to where you are now, can you take those lessons, whether it's from the gym, but beforehand, we'll kind of bring it together where you have the lessons from self, right? You had to work on yourself because that brings the confidence up. That brings the conversations allowing to see the people with the best intentions without that negativity, as well as the lessons from working with people in the gym and building opportunities, not just looking for them and letting them happen, like organically making something really cool. How do you bring that to where you are right now in your workplace or in life, whatever resonates most with you based on all of those lessons, at least the ones we shared, where it brings that personal and professional as well as a human element to life?
well, for one, it's a growth mindset. I have always, and you also mentioned grit, and it's funny. I just watched a podcast this morning, popped up in my feed that I've seen before about grit is one of the defining characteristics when you can look at people who seemingly have the same skill sets. If you have to predict who's going to be the person that's going to go farther, it's going to be the one with grit. And I was born with grit. I don't know how, I don't know why, but I know it's something that I have and I've always had. I didn't have to learn it. And for me, yes, there are times where challenges have hit me in my life. There have been the personal challenges, and I have had to climb some mountains in my personal life. And there are some days when you just go to bed and say, you know what, this is still going to be here tomorrow. And I'm going to be able to deal with this much better when I'm well rested and I have a clear head. So for today, we're just going to pretend this doesn't exist and we're going to come back more fully tomorrow and start over. So that's one thing that has always been valuable valuable to me, especially in the really really tough times. I'm in a phase in my life where I'm not dealing with anything like that. I have learned to get excited about hard things. If there is something in the company I'm working at, in the team I'm working with, and everyone else is getting bogged down because there's no way we can do that, it's too hard. Guess what? I want to figure out how we're going to do it. I don't like there can be a point where it's smart to give up on things, right? There's always
Yeah.
time for clear assessment, you know. But if I can see what the reward is going to be at the end of that road, I'm ready to roll my sleeves up and I'm ready to do the work and figure out how we're going to get to that. I always see the end zone.
Mm.
Everybody can see the end zone. So for me, I feel that one of my responsibilities, because I have that vision and that gift, is to get everybody to come along with me.
Yeah.
And it
And empower them.
it may mean taking on more of the work up front till we get far enough along that other people can start to see it. So I did a lot of that on my own, right? When I had my own company. Now working for other people, that's my goal. But I only am willing to do it and put in the energy when I'm working with other people that also want to share in that experience. The energy of the people you're working with matters. So, and that's again where it's a lot about knowing about self and really being open to paying attention to what's happening in front of you and with the people around you. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense. I'm processing. It makes so much sense because sometimes you know the outcome. You mentioned you could see the result. You have the vision. And a lot of times it's hard for other people to see that vision too. But you know so strong, it's almost like, okay, I know it's happening. They'll get on board when they
Hmm.
see the momentum.
Right.
They see the momentum, people get excited, and then it happens. And then it not only proves to yourself, it proves to other people, oh my gosh, we made this from nothing, but in reality you had it in your head. You knew it was going to work out, and maybe it's a little bit different than how you envision it, or maybe it's the same, but the point is that you're steadfast on that. One of my I wrote this year, 2026, on my wall, one of the things that just came to me. I've been trying to listen to my gut more, and sometimes what I do is I write things down, and I just write down what's in like my deep part of my mind, and I read it for the first time, and it was deep belief in vision. So that has been around in my world a lot more now. Even I was at a small business summit last week or this week where panelists themselves that was one of the topics that came up organically that was very strong. And for me, I get reminded of it. And I think that's so important because whether that, for anyone listening to, whether that is a vision on a project or a business or a personal endeavor, it's okay if people don't get it. It's okay if people don't get it. If you feel so strongly about it, you might as well try it. Because if you don't, then, again, that's going back to you're saying no to yourself first. At least let it play out, and you can always revisit it or tweak it or pivot it or whatever. But that vision can be so beautiful if you put your mind to it and do it. So that is a big thing. That's a huge thing. And as we get closer to the close of this, I want to maybe help people with there's these two questions. So the first one is, how can someone stay true to themselves? However that means to you, how can they stay true to themselves right now? Like I'll give an example. For me, a lot of it's journaling, because then I don't filter myself out. I have a great idea and then I try to second guess myself. Or maybe it's a different way. You see, what does it mean either for you to truly live in your values and yourself, or how can other people do that too? How can they be true to themselves in this time where we mentioned authenticity is very important to listen to yourself?
Just keep practicing like that's why meditation, they say, is a practice. It is not a one and done. So being very mindful of self-talk, and that's actually something we become very good at if we sit in meditation for any length of time and time again. Part of it is to become aware of our own mental chatter. And it's not about making it go away. It's about becoming aware of it and then learning to redirect the attention back to, maybe in the beginning for me, seated meditation. Some days it's just about sitting and paying attention, which I love to do early in the morning when it's very quiet and I can hear the birds outside and there's just the sounds of people just starting to, I live in an apartment complex. So just the sounds of people starting to wake up and maybe footsteps above, but just sitting for 15 minutes and just paying attention to the sounds around you. And you'll notice that you'll catch yourself all of a sudden you're thinking about, oh, what am I going to wear today? Or, oh, I've got that meeting later with, and then not being upset with oneself. Oh, see, I can't do this. This is too hard. No, that's what meditation is.
Yes.
That's this. And then about being, okay, yep, that's something I'll think about later. Right now, I'm going to redirect my attention back. I'm going to think about the sounds around me. So that's just one meditation style of practice. And there's many great podcasts around this that can take people through guided meditations, all different styles. What works for one person isn't going to work for another. And it doesn't even have to be meditation. For some people, it's prayer. For some people, it's journaling. I do, especially during growth phases, I do a lot of journaling because that is, whether you're aware of it or not, what you just said, that subconscious self-talk that you're now putting out and down onto the paper so you can read it aloud. And I love to sometimes go back to old journals and read them and to see, wow, look at what I used to worry about, what I used to think about, how much I have grown from then. But all of these are acts of intentionality, which I think is the real point, is whatever it is that we choose to do to grow as people, that there is true intentionality around it. There are we making time for it, that we are doing it consistently. Just like we've got to, you got to go to the gym consistently to build up your body muscles, right? This muscle also needs time. This muscle, like when we talk about the emotional heart, our emotional way of being, that also requires time and attention and care and awareness and practice. And it cannot just happen when we're always busy and out doing. It really becomes about learning the being aspect of life. It's
Yeah.
about being. And that when we talk about authenticity, how can I get to a point of being where I'm not always thinking 3 steps ahead, or I'm not always thinking ahead, or what should I say and how should I say to this person? We can get to a point where we can just organically operate in the world. And it frees up so much headspace when we can let a lot of that go. We talked yesterday about how, for me as a young woman, so much of my headspace was taken up, worried about things that just really don't matter. We're taught that they matter, but they don't really matter. And when I was able to get to a point in my life where I could let those things go, it freed me up for so much more. My little ring light just fell over. Talk about worrying about things that don't matter. The ring light. Gotta get that good lighting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Like you just can operate on a whole other level. So, and again, very, very long winded answer to your question, but learn to be forgiving of yourself. Because again, we talk about we're a mirror. The way we look at ourselves is the way we engage with others. So if I'm very hard on myself, and my self-talk to myself is, oh my God, Janine, I can't believe you just messed that up. Oh my God, that was so stupid. I can't believe you just said that out loud. Guess what? That's the way we think about and we feel about all of the people that we're engaging with. And that energy transmutes.
There's so much there in a good way, because there was that saying where we're not human doers, we're human beings, or something, where we want to be that. I've even since our conversation yesterday. So the fact that there's so much going on in the world, and there's always going to be things happening. There's always going to be things going on. And how can we observe where we are now? That's going to allow us to be more present. That's when you're younger, when people are children and they're experiencing the world, time feels so much longer. The days feel so much longer because you're being truly present. You're observing, you're looking around, you're hearing the noises. Everything's for the first time. And I like the saying, live like it's your last day and live like it's your first day, because you can take it all in and you can observe it for what it is, and that wonder, the being combined with the practicing from the mind and the heart, just letting things go and realizing that it is a practice. That's huge, because again, like fitness as well, you're not gonna get the biggest muscles in one day, nor are you gonna change the weight or whatever. It's a process. And if we can be lighthearted and realize that life isn't as serious as it is, it can be serious at times, but if there's letting the things that aren't serious go, then we can do that. And the practice, I feel, is a key element that allows people to not be experts in everything. I think there's pressure to be an expert in everything. And if we can just be and be beginners and practice things, even meditation, then we are a lot more kind to ourselves. And that kindness to ourselves translates to others. And it really brings that fear and that other stuff. It doesn't matter as much because we're just practicing. We're just practicing. We're all just literally practicing life. You get things right, so to speak. You change things, you go with your vision, and at the end of the day, you do the best you can with the information you have. So these are completely very deep but meaningful conversations and meaningful points. I mean, there's so many different pieces depending on where someone is in their life. I bet different people who listen to this will get different points out of this depending on what they need to hear right now. Is there anything that we didn't cover so far that you want to share, or anything that you would like the audience to know?
Wow, I think we covered a lot.
Yeah.
I'm sure, and that's just who I am as a person. My brain jumps around a lot. Yeah, I think just the point, it's if you haven't done a lot of this kind of work, it's never too late to start. There's no right or wrong way to do it. And I do think I like you touched on the word lightheartedness. And I like that word. I just feel that another thing for me as of recent, we get very inundated with all of the bad things that are happening in the world. And it can be very overwhelming, and we can start to feel very helpless. And there was a point where I realized for myself the best thing I can do to have an impact and contribute to the world as a whole is to take such good care of myself emotionally and mentally that I can be operating always from a place of respect, loving kindness, so that the people I engage with on a daily basis, I am having a positive, healthy impact. And I do truly believe that that does create a chain reaction. I want to be a role model for the people I engage with in how to make the world a better place to be in, even if it's just my little corner of it.
And you do that in so many ways, whether it's inspiring people to take action on themselves and their health, and in this new area, empowering people to see different skill sets in themselves or different gifts that they have. Like you mentioned, for you, it's grit and many other components. How can we see that in others? Because sometimes people just need someone to tell them that, and they just need a mentor or a guide that you do demonstrate that to others, and even when you speak with purpose and poise and projection. I know it also takes a long way to get to that point with the confidence, and there's so much that we can make a difference with. We could make a big difference just by little moments, and I love those. So thank you so much for your time, Janine, and
Thank
I
you.
will invite others to think about ways that they can take these lessons forward.
Wonderful. This has been a great conversation. I really appreciate you inviting me on here. Thank you.